Greetings everyone, I'm Maria Bregman, and you're on the Creativities channel.
Gothic art is one of the most amazing and impressive movements in the history of art. The Gothic period is the culmination of the development of medieval art in Western, Central and Eastern Europe from the 12th to the 15th and 16th centuries. Gothic architecture is characterized by its majestic size, tracery windows, high vaulted arches, and a philosophy of verticality. Gothic structures symbolize the desire for heaven and spiritual heights. Gothic architecture was also characterized by the use of new technologies and construction methods. Light and durable stone and glass structures were used for the first time, allowing for more complex shapes and larger buildings. One of the most famous examples of Gothic architecture is Notre Dame de Paris Cathedral in the heart of Paris. Its tall, slender towers, decorated with elegant patterns and sculptures, create a unique play of light and shadow that fills the space with a mystical atmosphere. In addition to Notre Dame, there are many other magnificent examples of Gothic architecture, each with its own unique grandeur. These include the west front of Cologne Cathedral in Germany, with its intricate carvings and detailed statues. It is impressive in its skill and artistic sophistication. Other majestic buildings of Gothic architecture include Westminster Abbey in London. This temple has served as the coronation site of British monarchs and the burial place of famous personalities. Its high vaulted ceilings, stained glass windows, and intricate arches are classic examples of Gothic architecture. It is impossible not to mention such a prominent representative of Gothic architecture as the St. Vitus Cathedral in Prague. Its tall towers and ornate facades have made it one of the symbols of the Czech capital. One of the most impressive monuments of Gothic architecture in Italy is the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore in Florence. Its unique dome structure and luxurious facades make it one of the most visited places in Italy. Gothic architecture is a magnificent display of spirituality, beauty, and technical skill. It leaves a lasting impression with its majesty and spiritual depth, and continues to inspire architects and viewers around the world. The spread of the Gothic style, with its openwork ornamentation and large windows, led to changes in the decoration of churches. The frescoes characteristic of the Romanesque began to be replaced by stained glass and mosaics, and painting in the temple began to play a subordinate role. New demands on mural painting led artists to borrow motifs from architectural elements and to complement the paintings with ornamentation that served as a continuation of the ribbed vaulting. Artists began to pay more attention to elements that had previously been represented only symbolically. Detailed images of flowers and religious objects appear in the scenes. Giotto decorated a niche in a church in Padua with detailed candlesticks, and his pupil Taddeo Gaddi made a liturgical set of sacred gifts and bottles the centerpiece of the composition. Frescoes by Italian masters can be considered the first still lifes in European art. The development of medieval painting was greatly influenced by the philosophical views of Thomas Aquinas. In his treatises, the theologian urged artists to move away from symbolism and express the idea that a work of art should reflect the material world. The call for realism was reflected in church painting. The composition did not change, but the figures in the paintings took on individuality. Faces became recognizable, gestures became natural, and landscapes were gradually transformed from backdrops into aesthetic objects that touched the viewer's senses. Windows appeared in the enclosed spaces where the action took place, providing detailed views of the surroundings. The heroes of Christian stories took on emotional overtones. The Virgin and Child began to be portrayed in the center of an everyday scene, surrounded by household objects, animals, and plants, which gave the viewer the opportunity to establish a personal contact with the painting. The Madonna's appearance also changed. She now has the features of real women who lived at the time. The role of architecture has increased. Buildings and interiors are full participants in the action. Changes in the way artists perceive the world are reflected in the work of the Flemish master Jan van Eyck. In the scene of the Annunciation on one of the wings of the Ghent altarpiece, An angel and the Virgin Mary are depicted in a room where the interior details are described in such detail and volume that they seem real. Among the characteristic features of Gothic painting are the deep religiosity of the subjects, the conveyance of the real world through metaphors, the linear construction of the composition, bright and rich colors, and abundance of action on a single canvas. At the time of the birth of the style, there was no unity of action in the works of the painters. The characters interacted with each other more decoratively than naturally. The ornamentation only emphasized the division of the composition into separate plots, which made the paintings resemble a narrative. The artist encouraged the viewer to look at the elements sequentially, one after the other. The Flemish masters reached incredible heights in creating large-scale paintings that unified disparate scenes. The artists set the action against the backdrop of a castle, courtyard, or nature, dividing the scenes with elements of landscape or architecture. As a result, the painting is perceived as a whole. This form is called continuous narrative. One of the most famous examples is Hans Memling's The Seven Joys of the Virgin, painted in 1480 for the Cathedral of Bruges. The final stage in the development of the style was the so-called International Gothic. This direction was typical of court painting in the first half of the 15th century, where secular motifs dominated with highly detailed decoration and clothing. The first portraits appeared with an individuality that would be clearly reflected in the work of the Renaissance masters. Gothic sculpture is also characterized by expressiveness, grace, and profound symbolism, conveyed through images of saints, apostles, and biblical themes. Among the masterpieces of Gothic sculpture, the Portail du Jugement Dernier of Notre Dame de Paris Cathedral is outstanding. This portal is a complex ensemble of sculptures containing numerous images of the apostles, archangels, and scenes from the Last Judgment. Each figure on the portal has an amazing expressiveness and dynamism, giving the impression of liveliness and movement. Another great example of Gothic sculpture is the statue of the Madonna with Child from the Cathedral of Notre Dame de Reims. This statue, dating from the mid-13th century, depicts the Virgin Mary with the baby Jesus. It is characterized by the exquisite beauty and grace of its form and the inimitable tenderness of its expression. Also worthy of mention are the sculptures from the Cathedral of Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. On the upper walls of the chapel is a group of 16 statues of the apostles, dating from around 1240. Some depict the apostles in simple classical costumes and bare feet, while others are polychrome and wear much more elaborate ecclesiastical costumes. Some of these statues are now in the collection of the National Museum of the Middle Ages. At the Museum of Cluny, the Gothic style is one of the most majestic and impressive styles of medieval art, which left an indescribable mark on European culture. The Gothic period embodies an era of artistic metamorphosis and rich cultural expression. Thank you for your attention.